Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to another edition of the Glass Academy Webinars 2026, presented in association with Ethos Empowers. As a part of this year's overarching theme, Envisioning India at 2047, Building the Next Century of Progress, our webinar series continues to explore the ideas, innovations, and design approaches that will shape the future of India's built environment as we move towards a century of independence. As our cities and communities evolve, the built environment is being challenged to respond to a wide range of priorities, from sustainability and climate resilience to resource efficiency, occupant well being, and changing patterns of living and working. At the heart of these conversations lies a critical design consideration: materiality. The materials we choose today will influence not only how buildings look, but also how they perform, endure, and contribute to a more sustainable future. Today's session, Beyond Finishes, Materiality, Sustainability, and the Evolving Role of Glass, explores how contemporary materials are reshaping architecture and interior design. Increasingly, materials are expected to do more than serve as finishes. They are required to enhance environmental performance, improve user comfort, express design intent, and support responsible construction practices. As architects continue to experiment with new technologies, traditional craftsmanship, and innovative applications of materials, the conversation extends beyond individual products to focus on how materials collectively shape the experience, performance, and longevity of spaces. Within this broader material landscape, glass remains an important and evolving component. Its ability to bring in light, create visual connectivity, enhance occupant comfort, and contribute to energy conscious design has made it an integral part of contemporary architecture. While glass may not always be the focal material, its relationship with other building materials often plays a significant role in shaping spatial quality and environmental performance. To help us explore these ideas, we are delighted to welcome architect Joshna Thomas, co founder and principal architect of Defining Space Studio, Bengaluru. Architect Joshna's work is distinguished by its thoughtful approach to materiality and spatial experience. Through the use of curved forms, layered surfaces, natural textures, and climate responsive design strategies, her projects demonstrate how materials can move beyond aesthetics to shape the way spaces are experienced and inhabited. Every project reflects a careful balance of performance, sustainability, craftsmanship, and the unique aspirations of its users. Beyond her accomplishments as an architect, architect Joshna has also established herself as an entrepreneur, leading a practice that seamlessly balances creative excellence with operational rigor and client experience. Through her work, she brings valuable insights into designing spaces that are not only visually compelling but also purposeful, enduring, and deeply human centered. Architect Joshna, we are delighted to have you with us today and look forward to hearing your perspectives. So
Thank you,
let's
Rebecca.
Architect Joshna, your studio is called Defining Space Studio, which is such a beautiful and thought-provoking name. So, what does defining space mean to you personally, and how has that idea evolved through your work over the years?
Yeah. So to me, defining space has never really meant only about designing buildings or interiors. It has always meant understanding the people first. So architecture for me and our practice has always been about people before places. So then, long before these drawings started becoming buildings, for us, it starts with these conversations about how these families live, what they value, and the kind of life they hope to create in these homes. So that belief and led to this empathy-led design is what inspired our studio name, Defining Space Studio. So, and also it's kind of what continues to guide us through each of our projects over the years. So initially, when we thought of, defining space, we literally got the literal meaning, like creating functional layouts, the proportions, and ensuring that every square foot served a purpose. But over the years, our understanding has evolved, and today we believe that we are not only designing a particular physical space, but we're shaping the experiences, the stories that unfold within each of those spaces. So at this architecture is just not about constructing buildings. So it's about creating the backdrop of their lives. So yeah, that's the studio's name.
Well, that's actually a wonderful design philosophy. And thank you for sharing the evolution of your studio. Speaking of design philosophy, there is a recurring theme across most of your projects, and it's that materials do so much more than define aesthetics. They shape movement, atmosphere, light, and the overall experience of a space. So, how do you approach material selection as a fundamental design tool rather than just as a simply finishing decision?
So when for us, what happens is materiality is never the last layer of a project. To be honest, it's one of the first design decisions that we make. So when we see materials, we see them not as finishes, but as these architectural elements that kind of shape the space. So every material here, like, I mean, it has a character, it's got warmth, it's got the interaction between the other materials, how light plays an influence on it, and so on. So that's why our material palette is often centered around these honest natural materials like timber or, brick, terracotta jalis, and so on. So these materials, if you notice, have like a timeless quality, which kind of age gracefully. And also I feel personally that these kind of materials create spaces which make you feel grounded. So then, and also it gives that authentic, like the how we evolved over the years, right? When you come to a home, you would want to get back to something which you came from initially, like your childhood and so on. So that's why, if you notice, there's kind of like a recurring element is jalis. We kind of use a lot of jalis and pattern surfaces with bricks. So then, for us, it's not only a decorative feature. So these jalis kind of filter the natural light. It kind of frames these beautiful views. It encourages ventilation and also creates these degrees of privacy, depending on the area where the jali is being used. So, and also the beautiful play of light and shadow around the day, which happens, I mean, to most of our clients also tell the same thing about each of these spaces. When we start off, they might just think it's just jolly cladded area, but over the years, they realize that they love sitting here at that particular, the different stages of the day. So that's been so material selection, that's why is very, very important to us. And also the natural light in our design process, natural light is like a major thing. So we consciously start creating these openings, courtyards, skylights, and also these screened thresholds like jali, screen, and so on, which kind of allows the daylight to become the active design material. So light also is kind of the material that we deal with a lot because we often kind of say that we don't design with these materials. We kind of design through them.
That's very true what you said about how you have to look into materiality when it comes to experience and the light, the shadow, everything, and how it is influencing behavior and movement, and how materiality has to drive your design in the first stages as well. So, moving ahead, many architects instinctively reach for brick, timber, or stone when they want warmth and character, while glass is often associated with modernity and minimalism. So, in your projects, how do you make glass feel warm, tactile, and emotionally connected to the rest of the material palette?
So, to start off with, we don't think of glass as a standalone material. We generally think of it as a medium that connects the people to the light, the landscape, and the architecture. So, it's the role of glass is in this context is not to dominate the space. It's to create that continuity and the flow of other materials to express. So here, what happens, warmth, in our opinion, generally doesn't come from the material in isolation. It comes from the relationship between the materials. So glass becomes warm when we kind of place it with the timber or the brick, and then it's designed in such a way to interact with these changing daylight rather than just enclosing a space. So in most of our projects, we use these large, oversized openings. So then it draws in a lot of natural light and also frames the views. But we also kind of try to balance the transparency with the wooden details or the jalis, the exposed brick, and so on. So these because of these layers that are added, they kind of soften the experience of glass because by filtering the light or creating the privacy and so on. Thus, it results in a space that kind of feels open and connected, and but not necessarily just left exposed. So they are also very conscious about how light changes throughout the day, as I mentioned before. So in such a scenario, glass kind of allows the subtle shift so that it becomes part of the architecture. So the morning light, the afternoon light, the reflections, the shadows, the seasonal variations are all another layer to this experience that's created. So in that sense, glass is less about transparency and just the combination with the rest of the material palette that we have.
True. I loved how you said that it is not just a material, but a medium to, bring in light and everything else. You just spoke of transparency, layers, and filtered openings. And in your projects, we often see these layers of transparency created through courtyards, screens, vegetation, and glass. So, how do you design these layers, and what role does glass play within that hierarchy of visual connections and spatial experiences?
So what happens is this when we say the word transparency, for us, it's not just about creating this complete openness. It's about creating this layered relationship between spaces. So in that scenario, when we approach this transparency, it is also in the hierarchy of visual and also the sensory connections. So in such a scenario, what happens? We've got courtyards, we've got these screens, vegetation, the glass, and these filtered openings like jalis kind of play a different role. So that is in shaping how the space is perceived. So in a courtyard, it may just become like a heart of a home, bringing in light, air, and then a connection to nature and so on. But when you have like a jali or a pattern screen, it kind of creates a softer layer of privacy. So in this case, what happens, it allows a lot of light, ventilation to flow through, and the vegetation kind of introduces the movement, the texture, and a sense of changing seasons as well within the home. So here, then glass kind of becomes another layer within this. So ultimately, our intention is kind of to create spaces that quietly reveal themselves and not like it's not about seeing everything at one shot. It's about creating these other kind of curiosity, the connection, and a sense of discovery.
True. You've explained that so well about how there has to be graduated privacy and layering the openness rather than just giving complete transparency. So, speaking more of the applications, when we go beyond the conventional applications of glass, today it appears in interiors through partitions, skylights, staircases, colored or digitally printed surfaces, and as subtle spatial connectors. So, what is the most unexpected or unconventional use of glass that you have explored or that you have seen?
So, actually, in one of our upcoming residential projects, we're kind of exploring with colored glass, but the colored glass not being just a decorative element. So, it's kind of our idea is basically to show it in a way that it's transforming the quality of light within the home. So, here what's happening is we've kind of introduced these small circular colored glass inserts in a otherwise a normal brick wall, and then um, we kind of incorporated the colored glass also on the main entrance door. So the intention here was not to just create something which was like bold or not seen before or like I mean a visual statement, but it's actually to allow this natural light to gently filter through the glass. And so that kind of interests us that in these moments you're kind of not expecting it to happen. So this plain white wall that I just mentioned about suddenly kind of becomes alive with the soft reflections, the colored. The passage doesn't become boring anymore. It's kind of changing colors over the day. time and so on. So, like, I mean, when I show the presentation also, like, I will just show, it's still an undergoing project, but this is kind of, we're kind of exploring with a lot of glass in that particular base, kind of using stained glass or, like Mangalore roof tile with glass inserts and so on. Yes. So, kind of excited to use glass in that medium currently.
Yeah, we are also so uh, interested and excited to see all the innovative interior applications that are coming up with glass. And we would actually love to see a few of your projects from Defining Space Studio. Maybe you could walk us through a few and share how different material choices, including glass in combination with other materials, has contributed to the final architectural outcome.
Yeah. So in this, like as I show a compilation of few of our projects, the notable factors again would be the jali or the kind of natural materials that we've used in these particular projects and so on. So in this, the first two images are of two different projects altogether, where I would like to kind of showcase the large glaze openings that we've done in these particular projects, which kind of act like the second layer to the home. So in this, what happens? It's paired with timber on both the projects. The glass being paired with the timber and the jalis, they kind of draw on the natural light and also frame the views. So in the first image, it's the dining and the prayer area of the house with the indoor landscapes. The minute the large windows are open, it kind of brings in the courtyard or the landscape area to be a part of the entire home. So glass has been used in such a way that it gives that kind of connectivity between the outdoor and the indoor spaces in this scenario. In the second one also, it's a indoor landscape coat with again jalis on the layer, the external layer of the house with the glass kind of drawing in the it's kind of the separator as well as the connector between the internal and the external spaces of the home. So these layers often kind of are softened by the experience that glass has been used, such that it's filtering the light. And also it's kind of creating the privacy by introducing the texture and the shadow. Now, in this particular project, we've kind of used glass for the skylight as well as these openings, which kind of, and also on the brick wall here. So what we've done is basically we've done these perforations on the brick wall and cover them with glass. So this kind of adds in to create a very lightness to the otherwise very bold looking, striking brick wall. So in this particular project, the courtyard is becoming the heart of the project. So the context of this is the courtyard. Now, when it comes to, because of the layering, what happens is it kind of gives a very different sort of a feel for the natural light coming into the house. So the layering aspect is done with the brick, the timber, the glass, and so on. This area is also majorly one of the areas for ventilation and also the area where a lot of light and shadow are happening. So the kind of experience that a person here has is very different because being at the center of a home, it still gives you a feeling that you are in a garden. So the courtyard serves that kind of a purpose. So that again gives a connection to the nature. So parts of the home again, where we've used glass here not as a spatial separator, whereas it's a connector. So in this area itself, along with the glass, we've got these wooden shells. So glass here has also enabled it to make it like a unit to display things and so on. This is in this particular project, what we've done is with the jali being layered on the external facade, the glass here, we've got a fixed glass. Now, what happens is the kind of pattern on the jali there, we've kind of got inspired by Kasuti embroidery. That's what's happening. So if you notice, it does not, it actually gives you a layer of privacy, but at the same time, you really feel like you're sitting outdoors and you can have like a cup of coffee or read a book and so on. Here, this is another project where we've used glass in such a way that we created a nook, a bay window. So again, creating that cozy nook where you can, again, sip coffee or read a book and so on. This is only to show how glass, when I mentioned about how it kind of filters the natural light and we kind of like the layering, this is the same project during the daytime, and this is the project during the night. So if you notice during the daytime, the kind of privacy that this particular project gets, you literally cannot even be seeing that there's glass on the external facade or how open it is and so on. But with the lights on during the evenings, you realize that the layering of these wooden slats that we've these lowered windows that we've used actually from the internal portion of the house is quite transparent, but you don't get that feel. It gives a proper connection between the built form, but at the same time it's giving a lot of transparency and privacy to the building. The same being here, the jali facade combined with the glass doesn't make it look like it's very transparent if you look at the facade here. But if you notice for the day, a night shot, you do realize you can see a lot of glass materials and so on. So in the mornings, you still have a connection between the outdoor and the indoors. Now, this is the other project that I was talking about using glass in the passage, the colored glass in the circular um, openings and so on. And this is the main door. So if you notice here, the passage, this is the passage. So this kind of becomes more engaging because of the colored glass patterns that we're using there. Because as the day progresses, the kind of color changes that happen and so on. Now the entrance with the main door and glass inserts, the colored glass inserts, the red serving like a peephole. So it also gives a very striking statement. So the main door itself, it kind of becomes not only visually bold, but at the same time, it's like a striking pattern change or the kind of glass uh, bringing in a lot of different colored patterns. It's a different feel compared to just a timber door. Now, this is another kind of example that we're doing in the same project where we're doing these glass cutouts in different patterns for the internal doors as well. So glass in most of our projects has been a crucial medium, but when you look at our projects overall, it doesn't feel like it's a lot of glass that's involved. We, as I mentioned before, we love using glass as a spatial connector and not as a spatial separator, as a different entity, as glass, as a different medium altogether.
That was great. Great. Thank you so much, ma'am, for sharing your projects, for explaining your selection process and how well you have integrated glass, the lessons you have learned. Thank you so much. And moving on, every material has a journey before it becomes part of a building. So, how important are considerations such as sourcing, transportation, and embodied carbon in your decision making process? And what value do locally sourced materials bring to the sustainability and identity of a project?
So when we select materials, we kind of consider the aspects such as sourcing, transportation, the durability, and also how a material will age over time. So in this, it's actually about making a conscious choice about the material being to create a long-term value for both the environment and also for the people who experience a particular space. So in that scenario, local sourcing kind of plays a very significant role. Now, the regional materials, which kind of responds to the climate and also the context of the place. Now, we try giving more priority to such materials. Now, in such a scenario, we kind of reduce the need for excessive transportation and so on. For us, so during design, what happens? Sustainability is not only about minimizing the impact, but also to the fact that it's about creating that sense of belonging. So a space kind of becomes more meaningful when it is rooted in the culture, the community, and also the geography. So we believe that the most kind of sustainable materials are those which are thoughtfully chosen and then responsibly sourced. At the same time, built to last, because again, and also connected to the identity of the space that they belong to.
True, it is so important to understand the journey that the material makes before it reaches and becomes a part of the building, the impact that transportation happens, understanding the regional materials, and supporting local craftsmanship, like you mentioned as well. So, um, speaking of again materials, architects are presented with an ever expanding palette of materials along with technologies and fabrication methods. So, how do you distinguish between a meaningful innovation and short lived trends? And
So,
what guides your decisions? Why, when you evaluate whether a new material truly deserves a place in your project?
yeah. So for us, what this meaningful innovation, it's actually lying in finding the right balance. So between the technology and also the quality of the materials. So the advanced glazing systems and a new kind of new construction techniques and technologies that's open up has like really exciting possibilities. But we believe that technology should always remain like an enabler rather than just a replacement for something like a thoughtful design. So when we kind of evaluate on a new material or a process, we look for the value it brings to the kind of overall experience of a space. So in that scenario, like, I mean, does it enhance the performance? Does it improve the sustainability? Or does it even create new possibilities in terms of light or form, craftsmanship, or functionality for that matter? So also, does it contribute to the way people kind of experience the space? So in that scenario, like we are very interested how contemporary technologies can kind of work alongside with this traditional materials and methods. So when we look at the future of design, we feel it's like a so yeah. So when we talk in that scenario, for us, the future of design kind of lies in a dialogue that is between the old and the new. So, in such a way that technology enhances this craftsmanship rather than replacing it. So, where this innovation kind of helps us create spaces that are more responsive, sustainable, and also deeply human. So it's kind of the best innovations that needs to quietly improve the experience of a space while allowing the essence to remain intact.
True, ma'am. It is so important to balance innovation with material honesty. And like how you said, it has to add more value instead of replacing the materials. Very true. So, speaking of innovations, for decades, glass has been associated with transparency and daylight. So, when we look ahead, do you think the next generation of glass will be valued more for what it can do rather than what it looks like? And what innovations excite you the most?
So yeah, glass for a long time was primarily appreciated for what it allows us to see. Its transparency, the openness, and also for the ability to bring in daylight. But I think the next generation of glass will be valued if for how it's going to perform, how it's going to contribute to the comfort and also the experience of a space. So, in that perspective, what kind of excites me is the possibility of glass becoming more adaptive, responding to climate, the light conditions, and the needs of people when they're using a particular space. So, the smart glass, improved solar control, energy efficiency, all this can kind of help us create the buildings that are more sustainable without also compromising on the connection between the indoors and outdoors. So, in this, I feel glass, the innovations will lead to a glass which is less of a boundary and more of an intelligent interference between the built environment and also the world around us.
Oh, ma'am, I know we are all excited to see the technologies and innovations coming up to India at 2047. What shifts in the way we design, specify, and think about materials do you believe would be the most important in creating buildings that are sustainable, high performing, and deeply connected to people and place? And what role do you see architects playing in driving that change?
So yeah, as this India 2047, as we are approaching that, like, I mean, I feel we should start our approach to materials to evolve from just selecting the finishes, also to understand the performance. So basically, in such a way that every material should contribute to the environmental, cultural, and also the experiential quality of a space. So in this scenario, what happens is sustainability is no longer just using these green products, but it's also to start designing with some intent, using the locally available materials, kind of reducing on the embodied carbon, or designing for longevity. Because in such a scenario, also allowing these buildings to respond naturally to the climate through the daylight or ventilation, the comfort it of the thermal comfort, etc. So now glass has a very significant role in this evolution, because beyond the conventional use of a glass, it's becoming like a very active architectural material that kind of shapes the daylight, improves our energy performance, or how it connects interiors with nature, all that. So whether this high performing glazing, or skylights, textured colored glass, or any of these glass inserts and so on, has the ability to influence not only how this particular building will start performing, but also how it is perceived and experienced. So as architects, we kind of have a huge role in driving this particular shift. So our responsibility is not only about specifying materials, but we must also kind of understand how they behave, how they age, and how they interact with the light or climate or the people using and so on. So with this particular kind of knowledge that we have, and combining with the innovation, we can create buildings that are more environmentally responsible, culturally also rooted, so that we don't kind of remember where like forget from where we are coming in, and kind of emotionally resonate to the what holds for the future. So ultimately, the future of architecture is not only in the materials, but how thoughtful we are as individuals, as architects, to use to create these particular meaningful spaces.
So, ma'am, you have so very wonderfully explained about how we need to balance and culture, and that is amazing advice for all the students and architects watching this. And with that, we now come to the end of today's session. Thank you to architect Joshna Thomas for such an insightful conversation and for taking us through your thoughtful work, design philosophy, and your approach to materiality. And across today's discussion, what clearly emerged is that materials are far more than a means of construction or a finishing layer. They are fundamental to how architecture is experienced. And through architect Joshna's work, we explored how materials shape atmosphere, movement, light, comfort, and our overall connection to a space. We also explored the evolving role of glass within contemporary architecture, not simply as a transparent element, but as a material that works in dialogue with brick, terracotta, timber, stone, and other materials to create openness, visual continuity, environmental performance, and meaningful spatial experiences. Through the projects and perspectives shared today, we saw how thoughtful material choices, responsible sourcing, craftsmanship, and innovation can come together to create architecture that is both deeply rooted in its context and prepared for the future. On behalf of Glass Academy and Ethos Empowers, thank you once again, Architect Joshna, for your time and for sharing your insights with us so generously.
Thank you. Thank you, Rebecca. Thank you, Ethos and Powers.
And to our audience, thank you for joining us and engaging throughout the session. We hope today's discussion offered fresh perspectives on the relationship between materials, performance, sustainability, and human experience in architecture. Do stay connected with us on Instagram and LinkedIn for updates, insights, and upcoming webinars. See you at the next Glass Academy webinar. Thank you.